Hi there, Vibe Gardeners. Welcome to another episode of Vibe Gardening Inform Edition. We're going to do a little bit of a 1 month update on what's happening with the garlic container experiment. With that said, let's go. So a little recap of what's happening since the garlic experiment here. It's right now November 9th. So the experiment itself started in October 12th. So it's approximately about a month in now. And so if you see my short, you'll see that about 1 week in, 6 to 7 days in, we already had about um, both small pots. Here we got the 1 gallon and the 2 gallon already has sprouted. And on the large pot there, we got two of the bigger ones that you saw there. Those two sprouted, and two of the smaller ones has not sprouted. And I was starting to kind of wonder if they're going to sprout because they're just sitting there not doing anything, and I'm afraid that it was going to start rotting. So what ended up happening was about approximately 2.5 weeks in, almost 3 weeks, I started nudging a little bit to see if it's worth putting it out. And then I noticed that there was a tiny little bit beginning of a shoot coming from one of them. I played around with the other one. I felt like it was pretty firm. So I realized that there might be something growing there. And there you have it. 3 weeks in, both bulbs started to show up. So right there we have 100% success on germination for the garlic. So that proves that sterilizing the bulbs and putting in just any soil and having it in the right temperature after a cold stratification period is going to succeed, as I've seen here. With I know the sample size is small, only six bulbs here, but the cloves, the six cloves all germinated. So that to me is a great news. So that's been kind of what's been going on with it. And let's go in for a little closer look at each one of them to kind of go over sort of the health of them. So take a look here. We got the 1 gallon here, and then we have the 2 gallon here. So these two have been doing quite well. As you can see here, this one right here, the color is looking fantastic. This one's showing a little yellow. So what's been happening is that since the pot size difference here, there has been differences in how quickly they're able to able to dry up the soil. So what I do is I would take my moisture meter in the soil, and I will plop it in there, and it would be staying at about between 6 and 9 consistently. What I did was I was waiting until I get about 3 before I water. Because one thing for sure is that garlic requires that the soil, the dry to wet cycle, is very defined. So that's what I did here, and I waited until it was fully dried before I put more water in there. So starting about a week and a half, when I start seeing these sprouts come up, when I start seeing about two or so sprouts come up, leaves come up, I started using my hydro green. Oops, knocked it off. Anyway, hydro greens um, uh, fertilizer, which is a 312 fertilizer with kelp and all kinds of organic substance. And what I would do is that the feeding instruction here is that it says you need to add about 5 milliliter per liter for full strength. And we did a little calculation on it, and then we discovered that we really wanted to be at about um, a little bit less than half strength to be adding here because of how young these guys are. And because there's so much, and because like I said, one of the problems here is that Miracle-Gro is a very strong fertilizer, and it's too much for potted plants. So that's why I'm using these hydro greens, which is a blend of synthetic and organic with seed kelp and all kinds of other goodness in there. And because of the precision I need, I would end up using these, what's called camera focus, please. Anyway, we have these beakers here. You can't quite read it because well, there we go. Now it's focusing. So we need about 1 milliliter for half a liter, which I was doing. So because each one of these are smaller pots, it's about 500 milliliters of liquid to be able to fill them. So for American standard, that's about 2 cups of water to fill it. And that would come to about a little bit half strength, less than half strength of this fertilizer. And as you can see, because of the pot size difference here, this pot, because it's only got 1 gallon of liquid, the normalization of basically the movement of the nutrition it doesn't have to travel as far. So this garlic here got enough nutrition. That's why it's showing absolutely no yellowing of the leaves of any kind. Whereas this one is showing a little bit of yellowing here in this leaf. And because none of the new leaves are showing it, it tells me that it is just fine and it's going to actually correct itself eventually. So I don't have to change anything about the strength of the nutrition. It's going to eventually travel its way to the roots. And as a root mass starts aggressively growing, it'll be able to get rid of this yellowing. Now with this large pot, the story is a little different because this thing is very big. Actually, like I said, I don't even actually know how many gallons this thing is because it's a store-bought one. This thing dries up very, very slow. We're talking about more than 2 week wet to dry cycle with how much moisture is absorbed in this thing. So as you can, so the thing is, I started to put fertilizer in the smaller pots about 2 weeks in, but the problem is the soil is not drying up in this pot. And that's why you're seeing significant browning here. So these are the first two that came up. And you can see it's significantly browning here, or yellowing here, because the nutrition, like I said, I have not added anything new. And the nitrogen in the bulb is starting to run low. And that's why you're seeing this yellowing effect really getting, what's called it, very prominent here. And it's not as bad in here, these guys right here. But like I said, the older leaf, like this one, is really starting to show yellowing. And so these are the two. So this is the second one that came out. This one came out about half week later than this one. And what we're seeing here is that this is a sign that we need to take action today. We must fertilize it. So that's what I'm going to show you guys doing here with this. As for this pot, I'm assuming I need combination of both of these and a little more. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do 750 milliliters with about 1.5 milliliters of the fertilizer feed to add to this to give it the feeding it needs. And before we do that, so let me explain a little bit of what we're seeing here with this garlic here. So you see these leaves here. So this one right here, it's starting to develop a fifth leaf already. So each leaf it develops is a potential for another clove in the bulb that's being developed down there with that clove. So again, the 1 gallon is also showing as well. The 2 gallon here is not, is still have only 4 leaves. So you can see with the younger one, this only has 2, I think, or maybe 3 coming up. That one has 4 already. It's only half a week ahead of this guy, maybe a little bit more. But yeah, so once we start adding the fertilizer, you'll see that the coloration starts to be normalized. But then again, like I said, another issue here is the size of the pot. It might take a little while for the fertilizer to really circulate around here. So we'll see how that works out. All right, so for feeding of these garlic here, I'm going to use this 1 liter measuring cup. This is actually designed specifically for feeding plants. So it's exactly 1 liter. And actually, there is nothing for ounces here, because majority of the plant feed is going to be using metric for their liquid measurement. So this is actually perfect for it in that 1 liter when it comes to feeding things basically in the house and a lot of times out in the outdoor garden. 1 liter is the most controllable for precise feeding, which is what we're doing here. And as you heard, I dropped that earlier, and this thing, as you can see, there's absolutely no damage on it. So it's a very high quality plastic and highly recommend it. I'll link the product below for you guys to buy. And again, the Hydro Green is what I use indoors for starting these guys out to give it a bit of that synthetic and the organic blend to basically feed the soil or giving the plants what it needs now for fertilization. So I'll link this below as well, and this is what I personally use. And I'm going to do a whole another video later on how I plan to make my potting soil basically be reusable forever, unless some kind of disease happen to it. Because, soil is soil. It basically gives structure, and you can do whatever you need to it to make it become the soil you need for your plants. So, but in this case right now, we need to give it some emergent feeding because like that video by Gardening Fundamental by Robert Povlis says, is that it is way too slow for organic fertilizer alone to be able to become useful for potted um, situations. So in this case, we're basically going to feed it the synthetic fertilizer it needs now. And then, of course, this is going to have that kelp and the other stuff in there to basically give it a little bit, that little boost to the soil to help the microbes as the plant grows in here. So, of course, as usual, shake it well, since it's a one-part nutrition. And the one thing you want to make sure you're going to be doing here is that you want to get yourself a dropper, because the precision you need for these things is very hard to measure, since we're working with less than 5 milliliters here. Anytime you're working with less than 5 milliliters, it's approximately this one dropper coming up to here is only 1 milliliter, and it's just too small for you to reliably measure with a cup. So that's why you got to do it this way, and it's a little tricky. I mean, no doubt, because the liquid is very brown, so it's kind of hard to read the measurement. But here we go. That's 1 milliliter. And I said we need 1/2 for 750 milliliters. And as Gardening Canada with Ashley says, you do not want to use any RO water or any kind of distilled water that has no particles in there, as it's going to leach. It's going to, because of the lack of dissolvable salt in there, like I said from my other videos on nutrition, dissolvable salt in this case are going to be not actual table salt, like sodium chloride. There are any kind of chemical reaction produced solids, and that's what we mean by salt. So with a water with no dissolvable chemical salt in there, like RO filtered water or distilled water, because of lack of a charge, like any kind of chemical reaction happening there, and it's going to essentially start leaching nutrition from the soil and kill your plants. And I'm going to link Ashley's video below that shows that her watering her plants with RO water or reverse osmosis water actually killed the plants, or tap water did well. I know here in Ann Arbor we have chloramine in our water, which is not great, because it's chlorine that doesn't gas off. But the reality is that even with this, as proven with all the other house plants in my house, tap water is just fine for soil, because soil is going to buffer your plants from that. Whereas with my other hydroponic video, it's not so with just the hydroponic water system. So with this, once we get about 750 milliliters of water in this guy right here, it's going to be the right concentration of nutrition for that large pot. So I'm going to go fill it with tap water, and we're going to water this thing. All right, so now we can give these guys the water it needs. I mean, actually beforehand, I'm just kind of curious what kind of moisture is in the soil here, because I don't know if it's truly ready for it. And as you can see, it's still pushing 7 or 8. So when you push it down, that's when you can see the real soil moisture, because that's when you know it's a full contact with water, with soil. You can see it's like 6 to 7. It's already very wet. But the problem is that we don't have much of a choice here because of the lack of nutrition in this soil for the plant. So what we're going to do is, because the top is going to be the driest, and as Ashley mentioned here in his other video about watering, is that when something is very dry, it's what's called hydrophobic, which means that it's afraid. The name hydrophobic, hydro is water, phobic is meaning afraid. Not saying that it's really afraid of water, it's just that water doesn't get soaked into the soil as easily. So what you need to do is you need to pre-moisten it with a little bit of this water here. And actually, I'm going to mostly leave these two nearer ones alone, because I don't know how ready they are to take a lot of nutrition. I'm going to basically focus a lot of the feeding over on this side. And you might say, well, it's eventually going to migrate its way over here, right? And I say it is true. But majority of these synthetic fertilizer with the nitrogen gets absorbed very quickly in the first like hour or something, like very, very early on. So we're not really too concerned about nitrogen traveling too far. Though, like I said, it's a little different with those pots because those pots, the root system hasn't gotten there. But that's because I was watering around the peripheral of the pot here. But here what I'm doing is I'm watering directly onto the plant itself. So that way I'm targeting the nitrogen where it needs to be right away. That way it's going to reduce the amount of overfeeding of these two younger ones. Or I hope that's what's going to happen. I mean, if I'm wrong, we'll see these guys get leaf burn, right? I mean, that's one way to find out with plants. You get immediate feedback. So here we go for science, right? We're going to get 2 pouring for each bulb. And then I'm going to do the rest on this side with these more developed cloves. That way these guys, especially this one's going to get the most. I think it's going to actually, I'm going to get 3 for that one. And this guy's going to get 4. The amount of 4 because this guy is the most needy, I think, right now. And I want to make sure that majority of the nitrogen goes to this guy as it has the most amount of yellowing leaves. And see how slowly I'm just approaching the water in here? Because I'm making sure that the water gets fully absorbed. And a little bit of foliar exposure here is not the worst thing in the world. A little bit more here with this guy. And again, not forcing liquid in there. You want to make it slow so they get fully absorbed by this soil and not get drained too far everywhere. So that's basically all the nutrition we're going to put in it. And seeing the size of these things, I think this is going to be okay. But again, this is gardening, right? I mean, every plant has their own needs. As we can see already, each one of these 4 cloves here from the same bulb that they came from, and also in the same soil under the same light, same every condition. This came first, this came second. A long time later, this one came, another half week, this guy came. Everyone has their own timing. And that is just the way that nature is. Every plant has their own needs. So as we observe and see how each one of them do, we will address them as we need with the proper nutrition feeding, laying off of water, or whatever we need. So that's basically gardening, right? React to what's happening in your garden. Another aspect of this whole setup that I cannot leave out is this oscillating fan. It provides the enough air to make it so the soil can have that dry wet cycle a lot faster, given that the humidity has not completely gone down yet, as it's not dead of winter where the heater is blasting all the time, drying the air for you. What it also does is that it gives the garlic a chance to really experience the wind like it would in nature, which is going to give it the strength to basically build structure it needs to sustain itself. It's extremely crucial in plants like dill. Without this wind, the dill is actually going to not have enough strength to hold its own weight and collapse and die. Garlic isn't as fragile as that, but we want to simulate nature with how wind is working in nature. So that's why it's very important to have oscillating fan in any kind of setup like this. So there you have it. This is what's happening with my garlic right now, and it's been a month thing. So as the next month comes along, if for the next update, you will see the more of the same kind of maintenance happening. And what's eventually going to end up happening is that I'm going to consider potentially taking some of the leaf for cooking purposes, as garlic leaves are actually quite good for sauteing and adding to your dishes. But at the same time too, I want to also make sure that I'm maintaining enough photosynthesis in the leaves to give the bulb enough energy to grow into what it needs to do. And as time progresses, it's probably going to be into the next year's growing season before actually bulb happens. And a lot of other changes needs to happen for the bulbing to actually start happening. But until then, you'll be seeing the vegetative growth, like what's happening right now with these guys. And I think they're doing just great. So check back for future updates on these container garlic. Until next time, keep gardening and keep vibing. Let's go.